Hi, my name is Kari and I'm the product architect here at FieldSync. In this video, what I'd like to go over with you is just some basic fundamentals on how the FieldSync system is set up and how you can utilize it to really meet the needs of your organization. Now, by default, when you create a FieldSync account, you have access to what we call the customers module. What I wanted to do is really explain to you how this module ties into all of the other modules so that when you're working with our staff to get your FieldSync instance set up, that we can properly understand your needs and set up FieldSync to provide the most benefit to your organization. Now, as we've worked with various customers across different industries, we've come to realize that FieldSync can be used to track all kinds of information about various different entities. So moving forward, we are starting to adapt our terminology to utilize the word entity instead of customer, because a lot of you out there might not be using FieldSync to track your customers. As I go through this presentation, please keep in mind that when I refer to entity, I am talking about what is commonly known within the FieldSync solution as customers. So as you can see on this slide, the entity is really the center of the FieldSync universe. You have your entity in the middle, then all of the other components that exist within FieldSync are related somehow to this entity. Tasks are related to a specific entity. Users are assigned visibility to entities. Events are tied to entities. And logs are also tied to an entity. So based on the business model and needs of your organization, you may choose to use the customer entity in a different way. So some things to consider. What is your workflow? Is visibility control a concern? Do you need to control the visibility of these entities? What are your reporting needs? Sometimes considering the information that you need to get out of the system is how you plan for how to get the data into the system. And then finally, how many locations do you have? So these are all things to consider, and again, our staff will help you as you go through the setup process to using FieldSync, but I also want you to have a fundamental understanding. When making the determination of how to set up your FieldSync entity, here's an exercise that you can go through to kind of determine what your entity should be set up as. Let's say, for example, I provide human services and need to track data specific to the people I provide those services to. Who am I? A patient, a client, or a participant? Again, going back to the idea that the entity is at the center of the entire system. In this scenario, you would want to call your entity either a patient, a client, or a participant. Another example, I have multiple locations or business units that provide services to customers, but I need visibility locked down per location. Who am I? In this case, your entity might be a location, store, or branch. So say, for example, your entity may be a location, and your locations are entered into the system as your Seattle location, Portland location, San Francisco location, and all of the data is specific to each of those locations. Another example, I manage multiple projects and need to track and report on each project. Who am I? In this case, your entity might be a project or a job. So if you work in the construction industry, you may want to set up your entity as the project. So you may have specific buildings entered as your entities. I own assets and need to track activity and maintenance related to those assets. Who am I? In this scenario, your entity might be an asset or a piece of equipment. And finally, I run a business where I have a repeating customer base and only one location. Who am I? In this case, it's pretty simple. The customer would be your entity, and you would be using the solution similar to a CRM. Now, within our last release, we introduced the idea of entity configurable fields. So you have the ability to go into your entity profile and add different configurable fields. So in the solution currently, we have standard fields such as first name, last name, address, phone number, things such as this. Now you have the ability to go in and add additional fields to fill out that entity profile. If your entity is a patient, client, or participant, you might have an additional information field or various important dates as a registration date or a evaluation deadline date. If your entity is a location, store, or branch, you might have multiple configurable fields for photos. Maybe you need an exterior photo, an interior photo, specific room photos, or you may also want to have a standard store layout. So for each of your locations, when you go into that location profile, you may want to be able to display a specific image so that each of your locations knows what the standard store layout is. If your entity is a project or a job, Your configurable fields might include GPS coordinates. So if you're out on site, you may want to be able to indicate what the exact GPS coordinates are of the project. And you might also want to upload a project map using the image markup field, and this will allow all of your users to bring up that map information when they're looking at the project. If your entity is an asset or a piece of equipment, you might create a service checklist field. This may allow you to go in and track the services applied to a specific asset or piece of equipment, or maybe you want to create a type ahead field that has features. So let's say you're tracking vehicles and want to indicate if it has air conditioning, if it has heated seats, anti-lock brakes, things such as that. And finally, if your entity is a customer, you may want to indicate preferences. So maybe whether they like to be contacted via phone or email. And you can also store a signature on file. So as you're out at a customer location, you can capture the signature on the mobile device and have that signature on file. So hopefully this has helped you to understand just a little bit about how the FieldSync system is set up and give you some ideas and how you can use FieldSync to further benefit your organization. If you have any additional questions or would like to talk to a staff member about how you can set up FieldSync to work best for you, please give us a call. Thank you.